This incident happened to a trucking company in Matehuala, Mexico. One of the drivers had a route going to Nuevo Laredo. We will call him Marco. The day before his route, Marco didn't get enough rest. On his way back to Matehuala, Marco fell asleep behind the wheel. He crashed and died. Strange enough, Marco's name appeared on the roster the next morning. You see, every morning at the trucking company, they fill out a report with a list of drivers who returned from their route. The dispatchers who fill out the report also check the tires and truck for damage. The management called the dispatch to ask why Marco was on the roster. Jimmy, the dispatcher, said,
"Well, because he arrived at dawn."
"What do you mean he arrived at dawn?"
"Yeah, he arrived. He's back there somewhere."
"What?" The manager was puzzled. He asked, "But were you the one who dispatched him?"
"Yes, I dispatched him myself. He arrived at 4 a.m.
"Well, I hate to tell you, Jimmy, but we got a report that he was in a fatal accident at 3 a.m. His big rig was totaled."
"I don't understand. He arrived. Check the cameras for yourself. I'm not crazy. As a matter of fact, he told me to sign him up for another route."
So the manager checked the cameras at the time Jimmy indicated. The managers can see Jimmy running through his checklist like normal, except where there is usually a truck parked, the area looks blurry. The footage looks like Jimmy's walking around a big rig unit. The manager was flabbergasted. He asked Jimmy, "How in the world did you review the truck and check him in?" Jimmy didn't understand it either. He decided to take his lunch early. Instead of going to the taco stand, he went to the local cantina. Jimmy needed a drink in order to process what happened. He bumped into some of the truckers there. They toasted Marco and bid farewell to the company's most dedicated driver. They had several rounds in his honor. Oh, and in case you were wondering, Jimmy did not return from lunch that day. This next story comes from a truck driver named Luis. This incident happened in the 90s when he worked at a trucking company out of Monterrey, Mexico. One of his fellow truck drivers there, we'll call him Victor. One day, Victor has not gotten enough sleep, but he still had a scheduled load to drive. Victor was driving from Mexico City in the wee hours of the morning. He was passing through a rural town with a couple of restaurants along the road. There was nobody out that early, except a woman from one of the restaurants. Just then, a huge tumbleweed crosses the road in front of Victor. The tired driver tries to avoid the tumbleweed and veers to the right. Victor hit the woman from the restaurant and instantly killed her with his truck. Victor panicked and didn't even stop. He fled the scene and continued driving to Monterrey. Once he was at the Monterrey truck stop, he told management at his job what happened earlier. They had him wash the truck and were like, "Oh, well, there's nothing we could do about it now." They just went about their way like nothing happened. So 2 days later, Victor returns from his route to home base. He requested for them to switch out his truck. They asked why. The truck is almost new. Victor said, "At night, something was moving the truck and talking to me. It's really scaring me." They agreed and gave him another truck. The trucking line then assigns Victor's old truck to a new driver who wasn't aware of anything. The driver was stoked about the new truck. He was driving a piece of junk at his old job. This new trucker came back after one route and asked for another truck. The company asked why. He says he can't sleep in that truck. He was at a rest stop in Mexico City trying to sleep. He said the whole cab was shaking and he heard a voice talking to him. He could not get any sleep. Now this truck is foisted on a third unsuspecting driver. The third driver comes back from his route also requesting for them to exchange his truck. Driver number 3 said that a woman appeared sitting next to him in the passenger seat. The whole time she's glaring at him with an angry look on her face. He said, "I don't know why, but she doesn't let me get any sleep." The word got around about the truck, and nobody wanted to drive it on their route. The trucking company called a priest to come sprinkle holy water and bless the truck. The truck was then assigned to another driver, number 4. Driver number 4 comes back from his route all agitated. He says,
"Let me tell you something. There is no salvation for this truck. The dead lady keeps showing up in the passenger seat. She's rattling the truck, she's turning off the lights, and she's scaring the crap out of me."
Nobody wanted the truck. The company ended up selling the truck to buy another replacement. Oh, and they took anything they could get for it. They started docking Victor's paycheck for the difference. Victor, the original driver, ended up quitting his job. Things were going well for Alejandro up until that fateful day in 2017. But first, a little more about Alejandro. We will call him Alex for short. Alex lives in Santa Rosa, California with his 2 Chihuahua dogs. 3 years ago, Alex landed a job in Napa Valley. He is an industrial mechanic at one of the wineries in Santa Helena. If you're familiar with that area, you know the drive into wine country is a long, meandering road through the hills. It's a 2-lane road with one of the lanes coming the opposite direction, so it makes it hard to pass slow-moving cars with all those blind curves. Alex leaves his house at 3 a.m. to be at work by 4 in the morning. At that hour, it's still dark, especially during the fall and winter seasons. One morning, Alex was driving to work and there were 2 cars in front of him. There was a truck at the front of the line slowing everyone down. The truck moved over to the right to allow the cars behind to pass. The car in front of Alex took the yield and passed the slow truck. The truck stayed right, so Alex thought he was giving him enough time to also pass. But when Alex accelerated, the truck swayed and went into the oncoming lane. The truck just kept swerving from left to right. Alex thought maybe the truck driver was drunk or had a medical condition. They kept driving on that windy road, but when they reached a sharp turn, the truck took the curve from the outside. At that moment, Alex lost sight of the truck. He also didn't see the lights anymore. At the speed they were going, Alex knew the truck went over the cliff, and the driver must be really hurt. Alex couldn't stop right away. There was nowhere safe for him to pull over. The lanes were too narrow with the cliff to one side. The first place Alex could finally stop was 3 kilometers away from the accident. It was still dark, so Alex didn't want to get out of his car. He tried calling 911, but there was no signal. Alex ended up driving all the way to his job. When he arrived there, he called the police to report the accident. They asked him the specific location where the accident happened. Alex was fairly new at his job. He'd only been working there for a month, so he wasn't familiar yet with the specific roads and street names. The police asked Alex if he could return to the site of the accident. That way, he could point out the cliff where the truck went over. The firemen and police can then recover the body. Alex told them that he could not because he didn't have a replacement at work to cover for him. But he described to them the best he could the location where they could find the accident. Alex was concerned all day at work. He kept his cell phone on him in case the authorities called back with questions. His phone never rang. Alex finished his shift around 2 p.m. Out of curiosity, Alex drove on the way back and found a place to pull over near the accident. He wanted to see if the firemen and police searched and found the body. He parked at an elementary school and still had to walk 25 minutes from there. Alex found the curb and noticed fresh skid marks where the truck went over. Alex looked over the cliffside and saw the truck still down there. Not only that, but he saw the driver's head almost sticking out of the window. Alex couldn't bear to look anymore, so he backed away from the cliffside. He was upset and disappointed that they didn't find the truck. Maybe they didn't look for it. Alex thought perhaps they didn't take his call seriously. Alex walked all the way back to his parked car where he could get a signal. He called the highway patrol and reported the accident again. A patrol car came by shortly and picked him up. Alex rode with the highway patrolman and led him to the site of the accident. The officer said, "Wait here, I'm going to go check it out." The officer looked over the cliff and told Alex that the driver was dead. He drove Alex back to his car and got his statement and all his contact information. Alex felt a tremendous sense of guilt. He started thinking, what if he would have turned back right away? Maybe he could have helped save the guy's life. Alex received a call from the authorities investigating the accident. Alex asked if he could have done anything to help save his life. They told him, "No, there's nothing you could have done. He died instantly because he broke his neck." Alex couldn't shake off the guilt. Every time he drove by that curve, he felt a cold chill. He looked at the heater in his car, but it was turned up to hot. He couldn't explain why the inside of his car was freezing. When he passed that stretch of road where the accident happened, the temperature went back to normal. Alex began having vivid dreams about the accident. He even dreamt of the driver's face. In reality, Alex never saw him up close, yet he had nightmares of the driver glaring at him furiously. When Alex woke from these nightmares, his dogs were barking at him. It took a lot for Alex to calm down the two chihuahuas. The anomaly with his car happened every time he drove through the same turn where the accident happened. Then he started seeing an ominous fog at that location. Lurking amongst the fog, he saw a shadowy figure of a man. Then one morning, Alex was driving to work. His car stalled right there at the curve. It would not start anymore. He pulled off to the right as much as he could and turned his hazard lights on. Alex grabbed a flashlight and got out to see why the car didn't start, but something caught his eye when he saw the dry weeds and grass moving. When Alex turned around, he saw a black shadow coming toward him. He then felt that familiar chill going down his spine. Alex was wearing a heavy jacket, but he was still freezing. The faceless shadow had almost reached Alex when suddenly another car pulled up behind him. The shadow disappeared. The driver of the other car got out and asked Alex what happened. Alex responded, "I don't know. The car doesn't want to start." The other guy, who was also Latino, asked Alex, "Do you have jumper cables? I'll give you a jump start." "Yeah," answered Alex. He jump-started Alex's car and both guys were able to drive away. This phenomenon kept happening to Alex for another 3 weeks. He weighed his options to see how he could avoid driving through there. Alex knew there's 2 other routes he can take, but unfortunately, they add another hour to his commute, so he didn't consider that an option. Then the California wildfires happened in October 2017. The roads along the fiery hillside were off limits, so Alex couldn't go to work. He caught a break from that commute for 2 weeks. When Alex returned to work, he thought maybe his torment was over, and he could drive through there unfettered. Maybe the wildfires burned the bad spirits away. Alex was wrong. On his very first day back on that road, he felt like something lifted the back of his car. Alex lost control and his car spun out, crashing into a tree. He can't explain how it happened, especially seeing how the car ended up wrapped around the tree lengthwise. The car was totaled. Alex walked away with a gash on his forehead. Alex had to buy a new car to drive to work. Now the new car was stalling in the same location. Then the nightmares started up again, but this time the dreams were different. The dead driver began signaling to Alex with his hand. At first, Alex thought he was simply saying hi or bye, waving his hand in the air. Sometimes the truck driver showed him 2 fingers, then his whole hand, then 3 fingers, etc. Alex couldn't understand what it meant until he thought about it throughout the day and wondered, why is this man sending me these signals? Why? It occurred to Alex that the deceased was trying to communicate some numbers to him. So then Alex started writing down the numbers in consecutive order, even street names. Alex realized he was trying to give him an address. Alex Googled the address and found it. Then the deceased started communicating a new message to Alex in his dreams. The dead trucker wanted Alex to go tell his widow where to find some documents. It so happened at the time of the man's death, his wife was close to losing their house. Alex did not want to deliver the message. Within the dream, Alex pleaded to the dead man. He said, "How do you expect me to go see a total stranger and tell her such outlandish things? Who am I for her to pay any attention to? She's not going to believe me." Alex told the dead man that he just couldn't do it. The dead truck driver did not like his answer. He unleashed his fury and tormented Alex 24/7. First, the lights in his house would turn on and off. Then the burners on the stove turned on by themselves, followed by the water faucet. There would be knocking on the doors and nobody there. Alex's dogs went crazy at night and early in the morning. He was losing sleep from all this mayhem. The most he could sleep was 2, maybe 3 hours per day. This started taking a toll on Alex. The dead man showed up in his dreams again. This time, he showed Alex a tattoo. Alex decided to obey the dead man and go relay his message. Maybe then he would leave him alone. Alex went to find the designated address. It turned out to be a biker bar hangout. Oh, great. He never saw so many leather jackets in one place. Alex tried talking to the bikers, but they didn't believe him. In fact, they got pissed off and were ready to kick his ass. Alex blurted out the tattoo as a Hail Mary. Just then, a lady came out when she heard this. "Wait, stop! What did you say about a tattoo?" The guy who was ready to pound Alex's face unhanded him. Alex recoiled and said, "There's a scorpion tattoo on his left arm." The lady started crying. She asked, "How did you know about the tattoo?" "Because he told me," Alex said. "If you don't believe me, go check the place where he's telling you to find some papers. I don't know what papers they are, but he keeps insisting you look for these documents. Please, just go look for them." She did go look, and lo and behold, that's exactly what the papers were. It turns out that her husband had already paid for the mortgage, but that day he went to the bar after work. He stayed there drinking until closing time at 2 a.m. On his way home, he suffered the fatal accident. Alex was happy to go home after he delivered the message. He thought that he was finally going to be able to live in peace. That was not the case. Things got even worse. Now the spirit was more aggressive and even violent toward Alex. At night, something forcefully shook his bed, not letting Alex get any sleep. This was affecting Alex's job. He was always at work tired and sleepy. It was hard for him to concentrate. It didn't help that the spirit followed him there too, making it a hostile and dangerous work environment. One day, Alex was up on a tall ladder. The ghost turned off the lights, then shoved Alex off of the ladder. He broke his nose in the fall. He walked around blindly in the dark, stepping on his own blood from his nose. When he finally found the light switch, Alex couldn't believe his eyes. The dead man's face was drawn in Alex's blood. Alex considered taking a leave of absence from work. Before this happened, he used to weigh 200 pounds, but now he was down to 120 pounds. Then one of Alex's dogs lost his appetite and became lethargic. Alex took him to the veterinarian, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him. They said his heart was good. They took blood tests. Everything seemed okay. Alex came home from work one day, and only one dog came out to greet him. When he looked for the other dog, he found him dead. Alex was really discouraged now. He was thinking of selling his house and moving away from there. He was tired of all these bad things happening to him. So Alex's friend referred him to a witch doctor in Veracruz. Alex called the witch doctor and explained everything. He told Alex that he's got a spirit attached to him. He said, "I can help you." Alex asked him, "How much is this going to cost me?" He said, "It's not going to cost you anything. All you have to do is pay for my round-trip flight to Tijuana, Mexico, rent a hotel room, pick me up at the airport, and I will rid you of that entity." Okay, Alex agreed and asked him how much for the plane ticket. But then 2 days before the meeting, the witch doctor called Alex and said, "Hey, don't worry about my plane ticket. I already bought it. The only thing I ask of you is that you let me take that spirit home with me so I can work with it." Alex was like, okay. If you want to take the spirit with you, that's fine with me. I don't really own the spirit. I don't think it's up to me to decide. I just don't want it with me anymore. It's ruining my life. You could do whatever you want with the spirit. The witch doctor said, "Okay, I'll see you in Tijuana on such date." On the day of, Alex grabbed his suitcase, his passport, and he jumped in his new SUV. He filled up the gas tank and started on his way to Tijuana. This is how his road trip went. As he was driving, he could see his dead relatives in the back seat. Relatives that had been dead for years. He could see their sad faces. Some of them were crying. At one point, he turned around and saw his dead wife riding in the passenger seat next to him. But the worst, says Alex, was that bone-chilling cold that overwhelmed him in the car. He couldn't stand it. Alex felt like the entity was draining all the energy from him. He felt awful. As Alex was driving uphill on Interstate 5, approaching Bakersfield, California, his car stalled. He made many attempts to start the car and nothing. It would not start. He checked the car battery, it was charged. He checked all the notification lights, they were fine. The car just would not start. After Alex tried everything, he felt the need to pray. He said some heartfelt prayers and begged God to help him. He didn't know what else to do. He felt like this thing was killing him. After Alex finished praying, he turned the keys to the ignition and the car started. He was able to make it up the hill, but coming downhill toward Los Angeles, the car shut off again. Not one light would turn on. Alex used the momentum he had coming downhill to reach the gasoline service station. It was between 8 or 9 in the morning when he got there. He asked the attendant if they had a mechanic there. "Yes," he said, "let me get him for you." The mechanic brought out his voltage meter and checked everything. He could find nothing wrong with Alex's vehicle. So they just gave him another jump start and the car started. Alex was just about to take off when the mechanic said, "Hey, what about the guys that just went into the bathroom? Are they with you? Aren't you going to wait for them?" At that moment, Alex realized this guy can see the spirits too. Alex said, yes, of course. "How many guys went to the bathroom?" The mechanic said, 3. Alex thought to himself, wow. So Alex waited around for a moment. He knew these were not real people. When the mechanic was distracted, Alex took off. After all, he didn't want to leave him with the wrong impression, or worse yet, make him doubt his sanity. So far, the entities did everything to sabotage the road trip to Tijuana. Despite the spirits, Alex finally made it across the border to TJ. He went to pick up the witch doctor from the Tijuana airport. Alex thought they were going to the hotel from there, but instead, the witch doctor had Alex park his car. They hailed a taxi and told the driver to take them to the desert in La Rumorosa. They instructed the taxi driver where to drop them off. They set off on foot around 4 p.m. Alex couldn't believe he was walking through the desert with this guy, but he was desperate for help. It began getting dark when they came to a big sand dune. The witch doctor stopped and said, Here is where we'll do our thing. Gather all the wood and twigs you could find, he told Alex. They were going to build a fire because it was getting really cold. That was enough motivation for Alex. He built a fire and kept throwing sticks so it wouldn't burn out. The witch doctor advised Alex to pray, and he warned him that no matter what he sees and no matter what happens, make sure he keeps praying. He said that's what's going to help you the most. It's going to be a hard battle, but with the help of God, we will succeed. At this point, Alex didn't know what time it was, but it was dark enough for him to clearly see the stars in the desert sky. Suddenly, the witch doctor approached Alex with a knife. He made a cut on Alex's right ankle. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt. The witch doctor kneeled and began to pray with his back towards Alex. Then, a dense fog came in right toward them. Alex felt dread like never before. He could see something in the thick mist. When he looked closer, he saw that it was a bearded man on a white horse. The man wore a long cape that covered everything except the horse and the sword he was carrying. He could see the horseman's hair and beard was cloudy, as if they were also made of fog. Suddenly, the horseman swooped down to where the witch doctor was. Using his sword, he touched the witch's forehead. The sword had a red glow, like it was burning hot. As fast as the swordsman came down, he flew back up and vanished. The witch doctor instructed Alex to start praying now, and don't stop no matter what happens. Do not stop praying. For the next half hour, they both prayed next to the fire. Alex even felt peaceful, up until a rotten stench could be smelled. Alex says the odor reminds him of a dog that's been dead for 3 days and left on the curb to rot. Nevertheless, Alex got so nauseated that his mouth was watering. He thought he was going to vomit. Suddenly, an ominous shadow appeared from behind the witch doctor. The closer it got, the bigger and more intense the shadow grew. Now the winged shadow was twice as big as them. The shadow blanketed the witch doctor. At this point, Alex began to panic. He was literally shaking with terror. He felt like he was going to pass out from the fright. Alex remembered he was supposed to keep praying, but he couldn't remember any prayers. As hard as he tried, his mind drew a blank. He couldn't recall any scriptures either. When he looked up, the shadow swirled as if it was caught in a tornado. And just like that, it disappeared. The witch doctor fell to his knees with his neck down. Alex thought he was dead. But then he turned his head toward Alex. The witch man had a dazed look in his eyes. He got up slowly and grabbed one of the sticks from the fire. He put the lit end on Alex's ankle where he cut him earlier. Alex again felt no pain. The cut stopped bleeding and the rotten smell went away. That whole experience left Alex feeling very weak. The witch doctor had to help him up. Then he told Alex, "It's all over. We could go now." They began the long walk back towards the road. By the time they reached the highway, it was sunrise. Alex asked if they were going to the hotel now. "No," said the witch doctor. "We go our separate ways from here." Alex asked, "What do I do from here going forward?" The witch man said, "I will be getting in touch with you. Just be patient." "So then is everything over?" asked Alex. "Yes, it's over, but I couldn't close the portal where the entity came through. You might still have some episodes, but you will notice results. I'm going to be advising you." As Alex walked toward the highway, he recalled everything he just experienced. He couldn't believe what he just went through and the things he saw. Before this ordeal, Alex used to be very skeptical. After 90 minutes walking alone, Alex finally reached the highway. Luckily, a truck pulled up and asked him if everything was okay. Alex said, "Yes, I'm okay. I could really use a ride to Tijuana." "What part of Tijuana?" asked the truck driver. "Wherever you could take me," replied Alex. The driver said, "I'm going to San Isidro. I can drop you off at the border in TJ." "That will work," said Alex. Alex spent half the day walking around aimlessly through Tijuana. He still couldn't get over the experience he had overnight. Later, he went to the hotel to pick up his things and his car. He was able to drive home with no trouble. When he got home, he could feel a difference in his house. There was more light, and the rotten smell was gone. For the first time in a long time, Alex felt glad and thought, "Wow, the nightmare is over." He felt so renewed. He took a shower, then bathed his dog. He relaxed and watched TV, little things some of us take for granted. The next day, he went back to work. One of Alex's duties is to measure the water going into the big wine vats. One of the water meters is located outside the main building, out in the vineyard. Alex hates checking that meter. It's one of the places where he's been spooked the most. When Alex walked over there, he actually felt at peace. But then he felt something pull on his jacket. Alex turned around like, "Oh no, not again." But he was relieved to find it was only a frog that jumped up on him. When Alex drove home that day, he could see shadows moving out of the corner of his eye. Now he's seeing different apparitions and was terrified with these new visions. He called the witch doctor and discovered that he was left with the ability to see dead people. Apparently, after the experience Alex had in the desert, he is now able to see disembodied souls that have not crossed over. Alex can distinguish evil spirits from the kind. He even knows when someone committed suicide or if someone has made a pact with a demon. Alex has come a long way in 3 years. He's no longer the victim of a vengeful ghost. The witch doctor helped him with that, and he continues to coach Alex. Now Alex can communicate with the new entities if he wants, or he can choose to ignore them. They'll just think he can't see them. Most importantly, Alex is in the driver's seat, and he's got the spirits under control.